The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. That is one of my favorite scriptures in Psalms 23. It goes on. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valleys of the shadows of death, I should not fear evil because God is with me. Welcome to another episode of Monica Mentors. I am your host today, author Monica Martin Fletcher. And I have a heart that's just so filled with joy today. This show that is pretty true to, and close to my heart. But I wanted to talk about, yes, the title is a little rude, my little southern twang, roots with an S and wings, like a chicken wing. And so my subtitle is The Way They Should Go. On today's episode, we are going to have an insightful conversation about how to equip parents, mentors, and caregivers with the tools and the wisdom to nurture the next generation in love about spirituality. This whole show is inspired by Proverbs 22:6, another one of my favorites. We're going to explore the balance of providing a strong foundation in faith and in values, which is the root. We're going to impact our children and empower them to grow up, to explore their faith, and thrive in their God-given purpose, which is their wings. There's another scripture in Jeremiah that says, before I was formed in my mother's womb, he knew me and he created me to be a prophet to the nations. We're going to encourage our children to go on the path that they should go on in this life and not the one we want, Mom and Dad. We're going to help them to remain steadfast even as they soar into an unsure generation. So let's get to some of our foundational points. So when you lay the groundwork, when you think about this, how can you teach children biblical principles in their early ages? There are a lot of schools throughout, I'll say, the body of Christ. A lot of churches tend to start at ages 5. I know some go as early as 3. I know a few that even start at 2-year-olds. And so a lot of times the earlier that you can set simple examples, it is not always so confusing to your children as they grow up, whether they're being taught at Sunday school, terms that they're hearing when they go inside the main sanctuary. Now, I hope a lot of this teaching, Mom and Dad, comes from you before they get into the body. And so children often learn by observing. Matthew 5:16, it encourages us as believers to let our light shine so that others may see his good work. And so modeling Christ-like behavior is a powerful way to help teach our children. Deuteronomy 6:6-7 says, parents, keep God's commandments in your hearts and in the hearts of your children and teach them diligently, discussing these things throughout their daily lives. Now, let me tell you, I was a hard-headed kid, even though I was raised in the church. I reached this season where I didn't want to do anything God-related, faith-centered. I was in this space where it didn't make sense to me anymore. Like, it was cool when I was a kid and it was cool being around my church friends. But as I got to that phase of going into high school and into college, it didn't seem necessary to me anymore. But I still had foundation. And so I can remember the times where I would hear that little voice, whether it be my mom or my Sunday school teacher's voice, Miss Sarah Montgomery, teaching me. I would hear something even when I didn't necessarily want to hear it. And so I would always say to myself, I could go and hang out and be doing things, and this little voice would always say, are you going to church in the morning? You going to get up? You reading your word today? Did you pray today? Like, even when I was in my worst, I guess what some people would consider worst moments, it was fun to me. I had fun when I was clubbing. I had fun when I was hanging out with my non-church friends. It was fun for me. Now, not so much fun because I really got into some relationships that I really shouldn't have been in. But for the most part, I love to say I was not weary and wounded when God called me back into my place in the church. I was having fun, Mom and Dad. And so I shared that to say, if my parents had not placed that foundation in me, if my teaching at New Hope in Birmingham, Alabama, if I didn't have the foundational space, there's a chance that my root could have gotten clipped when my wings were not necessarily spreading in the right way. Okay? And so you gotta encourage questions. Have you guys ever given any thought to asking your kids what they hear in Sunday school, what they hear in church, what they hear from their peers, what they hear when they're on the bus stop, what do they hear in the lunchroom, what do they hear at their lockers? Do you really encourage your children to have discussions? I did not appreciate it when my parents did it because in my mind, they were just being nosy. They just wanted to know, who me and my sister were talking to, what we were doing. But one of the things that our parents used to do for us, we would have, I can't remember. So Mom, Dad, Mika, sorry. We did it on Saturdays, I think, Friday nights or Saturdays. But we would sit in the den together and we would just have family conversation. And we were not necessarily willing participants at that season in our lives because we were probably ready to go watch television or go back to our rooms and just do what we wanted to do. But our parents did open up that space to have those conversations. And I believe as I got older, it was helpful for me to understand throughout my life how to discuss certain topics and information that may or may not have gotten me into some of the spaces and the places that it did, even in the workplace. Those conversations taught me how not to be nervous in front of people, how to have a space to be okay, to ask questions in a respectful way, to just be comfortable not being so sheltered in, but to be able to talk to others, including adults. And so you must remember that in any conversation with kids, you have to create an open environment. It cannot feel intimidated. The kids cannot feel like they're in trouble. They have to be comfortable asking you questions about faith in a way that feels comfortable for them to understand it. Now, you need to know what's being said and how it's being said. I do recall a not so great moment when I was growing up. We were mad at my mom for a long time because based on some conversations, we thought that divorce was not a good thing. And so we were mad at our mom for a long time, not knowing the whole situation with our biological father, what happened until we got older. But because we were not in a place during that time when we were being taught this, outside of our home, we didn't have a clear understanding, nor did we have the comfort level to go to our mom and ask for clarity on the situation. And so, in creating those safe spaces for children, someone has to make sure that the kids are okay talking to someone, whether it be a parent or a mentor or a grandparent, aunt, uncle. I think I mentioned it once before, my nieces and nephews come talk to me. I give them all the same disclaimer. Please know you can talk to auntie, but if it's something I feel like I need to get your parents involved in, then I'll let you know, hey, listen, this is something I need to get your parents involved in. And so I think sometimes questions of faith can be confusing if you don't create an open space. Do not try to meet your children where they are and not where you want them to be. That is a for sure way to clip the wings away from the root if you don't. And so there are practical ways to model Christ-like behavior for your children. You can demonstrate love and compassion. I know it doesn't seem like in this society that we're in right now, because there's so much what seems like hatred and animosity, not only just, it's even inside of the same community. If you don't agree with me or you don't like what I say, then it's causing unnecessary anger and hurt and tension. It's like, I used to use this term a lot, the me-fi-me society. Like, I'm so sick of the me-fi-me society right now. But people get to choose in our community. And so just because it bothers me doesn't mean it's going to go away. But I think once we get to a place where we start thinking inclusively of how our actions affect other people, then maybe we can change that. That's my side note. All right. So again, you can create an open space, creates an environment for children to feel comfortable asking you questions. So what are some practical ways? You can practice forgiveness. You can understand what they're thinking if they're in a challenging situation that you have never experienced before. You can teach them how to model forgiveness even if you're not good at it yourself. Let them see how you handle conflict, but do it with grace and humility. Now look ahead. Don't listen. Don't pick a moment that you're so angry at a person. Don't let that be the moment that you practice with your kids, okay? If you do have to do that, words of wisdom, don't do it in front of your kids. If you can't do it with grace and humility, then practice with them on, pick one of their stuffed animals or something, and then do some examples, but don't let them see it outside of a way that will cause confusion for them. All right? Because we're saving their wings so it won't get detached from their roots. Another way that you can do that is to help them understand what it means to serve others. I said it earlier. If we can get out of this me-fi-me generation, we can practice engaging in acts of service together. As long as I remember, I have always volunteered. My parents allowed me to be a candy striper when I was, I don't know. I was young. I don't remember how old I was. But we have always used to volunteer in the community. I remember with my great-grandmother, we would go next door and help the neighbors, and they would always help my grandmother take care of us. And so this helps teach our children the value of being selfless and also help to care for others. Another thing that you can do to help them establish their root, be honest and trustworthy. Your kids know when you are not telling them the truth. No different than if you sitting there talking to your kids and wait a minute, this story going a little bit too long. Something don't sound right about this. Your kids know. They might not know to the extent that you understand it, but they do know. And so they want you, your words and your actions. You have to uphold integrity. Children learn the importance of honesty by observing it in you. Another way that you can encourage gratitude, foster a spirit of thankfulness. Allow them to express, thank you for breakfast, thank you for dinner, thank you for taking me to, any of the restaurants that you take them through. Let them choose dinner sometimes. That's a way of showing your children how you're helping them to learn how to encourage gratitude. And then, this is going to sound so corny, tell them thank you for choosing dinner. They help them practice thanking them for cleaning up their room. And then you're practicing what you want to see in them. You'd be surprised what children pick up. Y'all don't give them enough credit sometimes, but that's okay. We're going to learn how to do it while we're doing Monica Mentors. So, why is it important for kids to have a solid faith base before they face life challenges? I'm a firm believer. If I did not have, if I didn't know God, if I didn't know who Jesus was, I'm just saying me, I would not have known who to call on when I couldn't call on mama or daddy, when I couldn't call my best friend. That was probably one of the best choices that I could have made for myself, because my parents didn't, my grandmother made us go to church, but they still left it up to our choice. We had a choice, not to go to church now. Let me be clear on that. We didn't have a choice to go to church, but we did have the opportunity to learn on our own, through Sunday school and, reading and the different things that we did, practicing. That's the word I'm looking for, what we learned in church. But I think I would be a whole nother different person if I did not know the word. And so you have to make sure there are so many adults nowadays who find themselves in a place where they didn't necessarily have anything to believe in. They didn't necessarily know how to pray. They didn't understand necessarily what it means to have gratitude. They didn't have anyone that they could observe honesty in. And a lot of them have shared that life, it just didn't look like what they thought it would look like without having those things available. And so how do we help kids discover their God-given gifts and their purpose? So one of the first things that you can do is you can encourage them to be independent. Start them out young. It's not unrealistic to start a child as early as two years old. How to make choices while guiding them with biblical wisdom. Teach biblical truths as early as possible. Share scripture that emphasize purpose. Remember, I said earlier, Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." Help them to see that God has a plan for their lives. Again, that was Jeremiah 29:11. Parents, encourage them. Self-discovery is so important. Nature, to me, is a great example of how our kids can learn about God. I think that, as you could take some examples of them going out. Take them out to look at the moon. Take them out to look at the stars. You can open up the book of Genesis and, just starting with in the beginning, and you can focus in on those things. Make that a family date night. Talk to them about the rain. Talk to them about the flowers, the trees. So you can use those things to help them, encourage and empower them to use that as first steps towards self-discovery about God. Now, observe if they seem interested in what you're explaining to them. pinpoint their passion as they speak about it. And then ask them questions while you're out there. You know what? What do you enjoy looking at the trees? Do you enjoy looking at the shape of the moon, the stars? And again, relate it back to the book of Genesis. You can ask them, carbon dioxide, the things they learn in science class. You can use all of that to help them to understand and to start helping to reveal their God-given talents. Another thing that's so important is model purposeful living. Did you know that you can demonstrate how to live through your own purpose to serve? I was laughing earlier because a couple of weeks ago, I did a race and I was exhausted. Like, I just wanted to go to bed, y'all. I did. But then I love what I do. I love teaching the kids. I love coming in doing these shows. I love sharing tips and tools with you guys that I learned from my parents and from my church and from my church family. And so even though I was exhausted, I love what I do. And so I'm helping my nieces and nephews and my children at Children's Church seeing Miss Monica living within her purpose. And I'm being fueled by that. You can provide them opportunities to serve. Encourage them to use their talents to help others. I remember in our children's church, we used to have our kids, our director, I thought it was fantastic. He used to have our kids to make cards. And every holiday, we would let the kids draw cards. And then he would take them to nursing homes in the area, and they would give them out to all of the guests who was in the nursing home. Oh my good, those seniors love that, because a lot of times, unfortunately, they didn't get visitors, but they knew every holiday, every year, they were going to be getting cards, holiday cards from our kids through our church ministry. They were able to use their talent, color, draw, write, and they were fulfilling their purpose. You can let them volunteer. There are so many opportunities for kids to volunteer now. Help them create art. Help them to share their skills. Do you know? Have you ever asked them, what do you feel like you're good at? One thing, my niece growing up, she played the drums. She used to draw. She still does art when she gets a chance. She loves basketball. She's a coach. I mean, she has fulfilled every single thing. Same with my nephew. Football. I mean, that's my little moneymaker guy, but he has still fulfilled his purpose in what they do. And so celebrate their uniqueness. To me, that is a star on helping the kids to understand their roots so they can stay attached to their wings. Jeremiah 29:11. We're all about helping the kids today understand their purpose. And so uniqueness may not look the way that you think it should look. I can go curly. I can go straighten. I can do every possible look. I can wear a dress and some Timberlands and be like a kid at Christmas. That's a uniqueness. My parents never told me don't do that, because to me, by not doing that, they were celebrating who I was. Celebrate your kids. Let them know they may draw a certain way, eat a certain way, cook a certain way. Now, jokes. I love my nephew, but I got this one nephew who used to drive me crazy with his jokes when he was little. But that was what was unique to him, and I still celebrate it. Auntie didn't laugh all the time. Well, yes, I did. because I wanted to see a smile on his face. So even if the joke wasn't funny, I would just be like, oh, my God. And then, I got myself in trouble because he thought, oh, my God, I'm going to keep telling him. So, but that's a story for a different day. So you got to prepare them for the world. And in equipping them, you have to help them both have faith and resilience to thrive in the culture that they're in. Mom and Dad, you might have to go read a couple of books. You might have to sign up for some mentoring opportunities. You may have to pay someone to help you understand this unique season that your child is in, because it may not look like what you're used to. But you can't just let it fall by the wayside. You may have to go on my website. There are resources there. There are some things that you can purchase that you can help them understand what it looks like to thrive in the space that they're in. Religion is not as popular. Faith is not as popular. Choosing to serve and volunteer is not as popular as I would think it would be, but it's still necessary. And it's a great way to equip your children on how to build their spiritual foundation. And you got to teach them to face challenges. If they're not doing it with courage and adaptability, they're going to be mad at a lot of y'all. Helping them to have faith provides hope and a moral guidance. Help them to apply belief in their real-time situations. They need to know how to deal with bullies. They need to know how to deal with vaping. They need to know how to deal with social media content. They are dealing with things on the social media platforms as well as in person. So you gotta make sure that they are equipped, put on their sword, their armor, and their shield, mom and dad. Because what you don't want to do is, you don't want them to be bitter when they find out they have to deal with things that they were never equipped for. You gotta make sure that their real life situations match up to what you're saying. Remember, they are action. They don't just believe in words anymore. They are action. I call them action resilient children. All because they have to deal with not necessarily more than what we did, but they have to deal with it in a different way because of the social media aspect of it. And they are dealing now with a lot of things that we thought that our great grandparents and great great grandparents had already dealt with, especially in this administration that we're under right now. So in guiding them through their challenges, when they wonder, how do we handle it when our children stray from their path? And how do you still show them love and support? Your children may stray away, but you have to continue to show unconditional love. And you got to pray. It's going to be some things they're not going to pay attention to, but you got to pray. You got to ask for help. That's the one thing our community does not do enough of. We do not take enough advantage of the resources that are available to us. There are more with you and for you than are against you. There are parents who have dealt with the same things or worse than what you've dealt with, but you got to be okay asking for help. And you gotta be okay not accepting the fact that it only happened to you. You gotta keep communication fresh. And you gotta keep it in a way where you don't feel like you're doing this thing alone. And you gotta gently guide your children back to their wings and to their root without judgment. And more importantly, you got to trust in God's plan. And you got to remain a source of support and encouragement. Now, this is one we don't talk about too much, y'all, but we got to dive into it today. Cultural pressure. What strategies help children to stay rooted in their faith while engaging with the world? It's funny because when I think about it, yes, all of the stuff that I did, there was always this one person that always said, Monica don't a bit more look like she belong here than the man in the moon. It was like it was on me even when I tried to take it off of me. And so I believe if we encourage our children to build a strong spiritual foundation through prayer, through scripture study and worship, it will be on them even when they're trying to take it off of them. But you got to model faith in action. And you got to help them to foster and understand what it means to be in a meaningful relationship, not just someone they're dating, but friendships. I know some people who got in friendships and the person did everything they could to break the will of the person who was faith-based, because it didn't seem like it was normal. It didn't seem like it made sense. And it never fails. The person who went along with it was always the one that got caught up when the other person went on about their business. And so it is so important that you help your children to foster those meaningful relationships and teach them how to discern cultural influences through the lenses of their beliefs. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If they're around someone who talks totally contrary to what you raised them on and what their belief, that's a red flag. If they're around someone who is trying to convince them, don't believe in that, you ain't got to be a part of that, then that might not be the best person for your child to be around right now, simply because one or two things typically happen. Either your child will go towards the influence of what that other person is doing, or the other person can be influenced by your child. But in most cases, the children don't have enough established faith built up in them to withstand those attacks. So help the children know that it's okay to walk away. And they can do that through the lenses of their beliefs. Now, how can parents and mentors continue to provide spiritual guidance as children grow older? All right, I'm going to give a selfless plug. You can go on monicamartinfletcher.com. You can go and watch us on Monica Mentors. We have some great shows on there. You can go back and watch all of the videos, but you still got to be convinced and you still got to practice. And you got to pray. And you got to help your own kids. Like as mentors, we can only support what you're doing. A mentor never wants to be in a space where we're saying one thing in that time frame and then they go home and you're saying something totally different. A lot of times when I mentor, I'm constantly asking the parents, okay, so what are you trying to get across the kids that maybe I can simply take out some of the language? Like if you're saying, let's go blue, I may just come in and say blue and help the child understand why it's blue. We have to work together, because if not, what will happen is it'll cause confusion to the child, and then it could even cause frustration. And they're just like, I'm done. I don't want to do any of it. And so get in that word, mom and dad. Get in the Bible. Get them in Sunday school. Get them in children's church. But ultimately, it really is your responsibility to do this at home. That's the only way. They were given to you, but they were granted. We were granted access to them, but they were given to you. And so ultimately, you're going to be the lead of what they do, not us as mentors. We can be your support, but we can't be the primary source of who they become and what they believe. Now, live in the verse. You're going to leave a legacy. What does it look like to fully embrace Proverbs 22:6 as parents and mentors? If you fully embrace that scripture, it means that you have to be intentional and you have to guide your children willingly in godly values. You got to model it yourself. I told you these kids can see fakeness. They can see right through you if you say one thing, but you're living something totally different. And you got to help nurture their gifts And you may have to start nurturing your own unique gifts for them to understand how to balance it. Remember, they were born in the world, but you can help guide them when they come out at an early age. Remember, I said 2 is not too young to start helping them to understand and to shape consistent teaching, consistent love, consistent discipleship, and consistency and trusting God to shape their path as they grow up. Man, I cannot say enough about this next thing, the power of prayer. Prayer works. I think my first prayer, I think it was Jesus wept, if I'm not mistaken. But I learned, it was simple, but I learned it. So find something that's easy for them to learn. Psalms 23 is it's an easy one. There's one in Matthew 6, easy. There's one I say in the morning. God, thank you for allowing me to wake up. Amen. Teach your children how to pray. I remember there was something else I think we used to say. When I was younger, I was like, it just made sense. And I got older. I was like, now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. That was one of the prayer I think my great grandmother taught us. But teach your children how to pray. They are in spaces now where they have school shootings. It's coming up pretty soon on the end of the year. Always something going on at the school, unfortunately. Always in a situation where they may need prayer. They might need to bow their head and say, Mom and Dad, if you can hear my voice, come get me from school. Y'all laughing, but I'm telling you, little stuff like that works. And so teach them how to pray. So what lessons can you pass down that'll last from generation to generation? How to be authentic, how to communicate, how to be honest, how to be reliable, how to have integrity, how to pray. I said that, yeah. How to trust themselves, how to embrace their creativity, how to tell the truth, how possibly, if you choose not to tell the truth, teach them about consequences. And there are several lessons in the Bible that teaches you how things go from generation to generation to generation. This thing that we're dealing with right now in our culture, this is not new. It's not. Our great-grandparents unfortunately dealt with some of the same things that we're dealing with right now. Maybe the reason it's so hard for us because maybe they didn't talk about it because it was really painful. Perhaps they never thought it would come back around again. But throughout the Bible, I promise you, when you read it, it's going to tell you first generation, it went to second generation, third generation, fourth generation. So it will help you to understand why it's important to understand that generational things can be passed down. And you got to talk about the lessons, the good and the bad, that may come from that. Now, as we come to the close of this episode, let's reflect on the wisdom that's found in Proverbs. Don't forget, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they are old, they will not depart from it. This verse is more than a cliche. It is really advice, Mom and Dad. It's a calling. It is genuinely a reminder that how we shape the next generation, it is our responsibility for what they look like, whether we pick them up or whether we drop them. It genuinely speaks to the importance of planting seeds of faith, of value, and truth in the hearts of our children. Did you know your child is a seed and not just when they come out of your womb? And so just like a garden, when you plant a seed, you have to water it so that it'll grow and flourish through their lives. Training children in the way they should go is not just about teaching them rules or principles. It's about walking alongside them, modeling Christlike love. And you got to provide a solid foundation of faith that equips them to navigate life's challenges. It's not just about only giving them truth. It's about giving them roots to ground them so that their wings will help them to soar into the future. The journey, it requires patience. Lord knows it's going to require some patience. And it's going to require intentionality, mom and dad. And you're going to have to trust in God's guidance. While you may not always see immediate results, go interview my mom and dad. You can hold on to the promise that the lessons that you instill in them when they're young, if you do it with loving care and not judgment, I promise you, it'll leave a lasting legacy. As parents, mentors, caregivers, our mission is clear: to guide our children in this generation towards a relationship with Christ. And you must empower them to stand firm in their faith no matter what situation they find themselves in and no matter where life takes them. Now, I want you to leave this episode encouraged, knowing that the time and the effort that you pour into shaping their young hearts and their minds are acts that are eternally significant. Now, what are we going to do, y'all? Are we going to commit to raise this generation, to walk it out, and to shine in God's love? Or are we going to continue to choose to say it doesn't even matter because they're going to do whatever they want to do in the first place? Now that's some food for thought. Until next time, it's easy, it's practical, it's what you need to do, it's what you could do. But at the end of the day, like I said, my mother always says, all of life simply boils down to a choice. All right, y'all, I'll talk to you next time. Be blessed.